No film is the same. Every film has different difficulties and different problems to sort out.
You know, pre-production is where the heart and soul of the film is molded. It's in the actual shooting that mold is filled out. So it's absolutely crucial.
Prep is invaluable, low-cost time for the production, and the earlier you're on it, the more you can give the production. The more money you can save, the more time you can save. So it's vital.
You spend a lot of time in pre-production breaking down the script. You know, the locations have a lot to do with the storytelling of how you're going to tell the story. So it's so important in the research and development of the ideas.
There is a certain procedure to how you get to your final product that is similar in music, art, and cinema, and that's the idea that you start with a sketch and you end up with a painting.
If you can't go in and pre-plan the basic approach, then you are doomed to fail to meet your schedule. Guaranteed.
So what would normally happen is that someone would send me a script and say, you know, would you be interested? I would read it and see whether there was something in the script that appealed to me.
But there are certain scripts, Wolf Hall's an obvious one, where you just, the moment you hear about it, you go, I want to go on that. And I was desperate to work on that.
As soon as I read a script, I have a certain visual idea in my head. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't know why it happens, but I very, very quickly have a pretty good idea of what I think that particular script should look like visually.
When I read a script, if I'm going to do it, it's because it's generated images in my mind. When I'm reading it, if I see it running like a film, that's a big plus.
And then you go through it, you know, before you meet the director and try and think photographically what you might do. You know, what would be a good thing, or you know, why do you like that scene, or the importance of the moment in this scene is not when they say, I love you. It's like when she walks out the door and she looks back at him. So it actually might not be written.
You get ideas reading the script about how it might look, but then at the same time, each director will have his own vision. So the important thing is to meet with the director, talk to him, and see what he wants from the script and how he sees the script. And if you think you're at loggerheads with him and that it's not going to work out, then you might back away from the production.
So once I've got a script, I've got the job, and it's generating pictures for me, the first thing to do is to research it. If it's present day, if it's period, what's the period? If it's in the future, what can I research about the future? So you want to get some kind of information. You want to start to gather together references so that when you talk to the director, you've got some common ground.
When you're meeting with the director, you know, hopefully they have ideas about the film that they wish to explore with you. And you look at films together, you look at photographs, you look at, you read books, you know, you try to find common references to point in a direction that the film might go in.
So to take an easy example, a period film, like Wolf Hall, for instance, you start to look at the references for Wolf Hall, the painters of the time, the painters around that time, so Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Holbein. You go to galleries, you look at books, and you start to sort of talk to the director. You know, what look do you like? Holbein's very different from Caravaggio. While you're doing this process, you're trying to find out what did the time period look like, what's real, and also how is the director seeing it. And it's a very useful resource. And you do this with picture books as well. That's why I've got a load of photographic books up there.
You get the job and then you start talking to the director about his or her visions of what they see. And, you know, another great thing about this industry is that everyone is different. Everyone has a different approach and a different sensibility of looks and style.
Because you look at what picture will fire off the director's imagination. There'll be one, you'll say, yeah, that's it. I want it to look like, you know, Saul Leiter, you know, for Carol. Those images were key for Carol. So there's often kind of one photographer or artist that particularly encapsulates the vision of the director. And that's the first job. The first step is to find out what that common ground is. And from that, you can start to build outwards.
And part of that is, talking about how cutty it's going to be, whether it's going to be, sort of lyrical and languid, or whether there's going to be a mix of fast-cutting sequences with slower elements. And you would hope to be able to spend the time and go through the script scene by scene with the director and discuss, that overall feel of movement of the camera within the scene itself. And it would be at that point that you might identify, and sometimes it might be the director who identifies a scene and says, look, I'd like to do this in one take. Or maybe not. Or I'll see a scene and say, well, that could be really interesting in one take. And it's up to the director then to decide.
So for Wolf Hall, Rembrandt, Caravaggio, they're very obvious for me. But I found a painter called Gerrit von Honthorst, who did a lot of pictures of like single source pictures lit just by one candle, which were extraordinary. They were actually sometimes quite unflattering, but they were clearly, he was painting what he saw. He was an eyewitness to the time.
I would have a whole bunch of notes. The director would have his notes. I would say, well, how would you want to? What's the point of this scene? Where is it going? How about shooting it in this way? And he would say, well, I thought that it should be done in that way. And then we'd just talk about it and throw ideas at each other, whichever the best idea wins,
What I tend to do is break it down myself. I don't think all cameramen do this, but I devised a database for myself so that I could link equipment to scene numbers. And that way I would go through the script and I would write a one-sentence description of what happens. And I would include in my description anything that was photographic: rain, sunset, night, lightning, fire, any of those things that would affect how it looks.
The process of pre-production is the same with pretty much every film. Once I've read the script, interviewed with the director, have been offered the job, which of course is the most important thing, there's then a period of negotiation of wages and the working out of the schedule, the pre-production schedule. I would hope to have about 6 weeks pre-production on a feature film.
On Wolf Hall, I had 6 weeks, which is unusually generous, but it was a 17-week shoot.
I would say 6 to 8 weeks for an independent film, and for me, it's usually 12 to 16 weeks on a studio film.
Because the reality is, if you come in at 4 weeks, everyone else is arriving, you will not have enough time with the director. Because the last 2 weeks, the director is completely inundated with actors arriving, still working on the script. There are 10,000 things that the director has to do for the last 2 weeks to the build-up. For the last 4 weeks, the director is quite busy, but you can get to him sometimes, but not often enough. If you start 6 weeks out, then you have a good, clear 10 days where you might get access to the director and you can actually get stuff done.